3-year-old little boy. Instead, the family of Julian Wood is preparing for his funeral. The little boy, nicknamed Juju, was just grocery shopping with his mom when his life was stolen from him in a vicious and random attack.
A poignant farewell to little Julian Wood.
A 3-year-old child. Didn't even get a chance yet.
Grief came dressed in green, the color he loved best. It came with dinosaurs, his favorite, in a heartbreaking and emotional tribute.
He loved dinosaurs. That's what his family wants you to know. Not how he died, not the details of what happened in that parking lot on a sunny Monday afternoon in North Olmsted, Ohio. Not the courtroom, not the sentence. They want you to know that Julian Wood was 3 years old and he loved dinosaurs and he had a big wild smile and he was so excited about starting school that he could barely contain himself. He would have turned 5 years old the week his killer was sentenced. Let that land. 5 years old. He never got there. On June 3rd, 2024, a Monday afternoon, the kind of ordinary weekday that feels completely unremarkable until it isn't, Julian Wood went grocery shopping with his mother Margot at a Giant Eagle in North Olmsted, Ohio. He sat in the shopping cart the way 3-year-olds do. His mother pushed him through the aisles. They paid for their groceries. They walked out to the car, and they never made it inside. What happened in that parking lot in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, in front of security cameras, in a suburban shopping center where families go on ordinary Monday afternoons, was so sudden, so savage, and so completely without motive that it shook an entire state and left investigators, prosecutors, and ordinary people searching for an explanation that simply does not exist. Because there was no explanation. There was no argument. No confrontation, no history between the attacker and this family, no reason. Bionca Ellis chose Margot Wood and her 3-year-old son Julian in a grocery store parking lot. That was all it took. She chose them, and then she attacked. Margot Wood survived. She will carry what she saw that day for the rest of her life. She held her son as he took his last breath. She said the last sound she will ever hear from him is his scream.
That woman murdering my son replays in my head every single day. It is my living nightmare. The last thing I will ever hear from my son is his scream, the sound of his pain and fear before he was gone. And I can still see the terror in his eyes. And it haunts me every day.
Julian did not survive. This is his story. This is his mother's story. And this is a story about what it means to lose the most innocent, most defenseless life imaginable to random, senseless, unforgivable violence on an ordinary Monday afternoon. If you are watching this for the first time, welcome. Subscribe right now because this channel exists for one reason, to make sure stories like Julian's are told with the weight and the honesty they deserve. And if you have been here before, stay with me, because this one is going to be hard and it needs to be heard. North Olmsted is the kind of place that doesn't make national news. A quiet suburb west of Cleveland, family neighborhoods, strip malls. The kind of community where people know their neighbors and let their kids play outside and go to Giant Eagle on Monday afternoons without a second thought about whether they will come home. June 3rd, 2024 was that kind of day, a Monday. Mid-afternoon, the sun was out, families were running errands. The Giant Eagle on Lorraine Road near Dover Center Road was busy with the ordinary rhythm of a weekday afternoon. Carts rolling, checkout lanes humming, the completely unremarkable sound of a community living its life. Margot Wood was 37 years old, a mother. She had a 3-year-old son named Julian who had her heart completely. Anyone who knew them could tell you that. Julian was that kind of child, the kind whose energy fills a room, whose smile you remember, whose enthusiasm for things like dinosaurs and school is contagious in the way that only very young children can be. She put him in the cart that day the way she had done hundreds of times before, pushed him through the aisles, got what they needed, stood in line, paid, gathered their bags, a completely ordinary Monday afternoon. And on the other side of the shopping center, in a Volunteers of America thrift store just next door, something was happening that Margot Wood knew nothing about. Something that would end her ordinary Monday in a way that no parent should ever have to experience. Drop a comment right now. One word. Just tell me how you are feeling. I read every single one. Before Bionca Ellis ever walked into Giant Eagle, before she ever saw Margot Wood or Julian, she was next door. The Volunteers of America thrift store sits adjacent to the Giant Eagle on Lorraine Road. At approximately 3 p.m. on June 3, 2024, 34-year-old Bionca Ellis walked into that thrift store. She browsed, and then she stole 2 knives. Not 1, 2. Prosecutors would later present this detail at trial as evidence of premeditation, or at minimum, of intent. She did not pick up 1 knife impulsively. She selected 2. She concealed them. She left the store without paying. And then she walked next door. This detail, 2 knives stolen from a thrift store before walking into a grocery store, is one of the most chilling elements of this entire case. Because it means that before Bionca Ellis ever laid eyes on Margot Wood and Julian, she was already armed. Already carrying weapons she had just stolen. Already in a state of mind that led her to walk into a thrift store, take 2 knives, and continue on to whatever came next. What came next was a Giant Eagle parking lot, and a mother, and a 3-year-old boy in a shopping cart.
We are getting a first look at surveillance camera video from the deadly attack at a local
to the
Giant
night.
Eagle.
She then passes Margot Wood and her 3-year-old son Julian. Ellis immediately turns around and starts to follow them. Cameras show just before 3 p.m., Ellis walked into the lobby and follows behind the mother and son as they exit the store. Cameras then show her following them through the parking lot and to their car.
Prosecutors stated clearly and explicitly during trial that inside the Giant Eagle, in the aisles, at the checkout, anywhere inside the store, there was no argument, no confrontation, no interaction of any kind between Bionca Ellis and the Wood family. She simply noticed them. Margot Wood shopping with her 3-year-old son, Julian, in the cart. A mother and her child doing something millions of families do every single day without a second thought. And Bionca Ellis began following them through the store, through checkout, out through the exit doors, into the parking lot, all the way to their car. Surveillance footage and witness accounts confirm this. She followed them deliberately and consistently from inside the store all the way to the moment of the attack. Margot Wood had no idea. She was carrying her groceries, pushing her son, moving toward her car. She had no reason to look over her shoulder. She was in a suburban grocery store parking lot in broad daylight. She was safe. She was supposed to be safe. The distance between the Giant Eagle exit and their car was the last ordinary stretch of ground Julian Wood would ever cross. What happened next lasted seconds. It felt like it lasted forever to everyone who witnessed it. Julian was sitting in a shopping cart. Margot had reached their car and was beginning to load groceries. Bionca Ellis closed the distance, and then she attacked Julian. She stabbed him multiple times. A 3-year-old child sitting in a shopping cart. Margot Wood reacted the way any mother would, instantly, instinctively, without a single second of hesitation. She threw herself at the cart, trying to pull her son out, trying to get him away, trying to put herself between her child and the woman attacking him. She was stabbed too. People in the parking lot heard what was happening, screaming. Chaos. People running. Phones out. 911 calls flooding in simultaneously from multiple witnesses who could not believe what they were seeing in a suburban grocery store parking lot on a Monday afternoon. Bionca Ellis, after the attack, walked away, calmly. She headed toward Dover Center Road, still holding the knife. That image, a woman walking calmly away from a shopping cart where a 3-year-old had just been stabbed, knife still in hand, is one that witnesses described to investigators, and that has stayed with everyone who heard the testimony. Police arrived quickly. They found Ellis walking and arrested her on scene without incident. She did not resist. She did not run. She was simply walking, knife in hand, as if what had just happened behind her was already over. For Julian Wood, it almost was. I need you to hit the like button right now, not for the algorithm, for Julian, for for Margot so that this story reaches every person who needs to hear it. One tap, please. Emergency medical services arrived and found Julian Wood critically injured. The wounds were severe. Multiple stab wounds on a 3-year-old body that had no capacity to survive what had been done to it. Both Julian and Margot were rushed to a nearby hospital. Medical teams worked on Julian with everything they had. It was not enough. Julian Wood died from his injuries. He was 3 years old. He had been sitting in a shopping cart. He had done nothing except exist. Small and trusting and completely dependent on a world that was supposed to protect him. Margot Wood survived her stab wounds physically. She was treated. She lived. And in the days, weeks, and months that followed, she had to figure out how to exist in a world where her son did not. Where the last sound she would ever hear from him was his scream. Where the last image burned into her memory was the terror in his eyes. There are no words adequate to that. There is no framework for what Margot Wood survived. Not the stabbing, but the aftermath. Not the physical wounds, but the ones that do not show on any medical scan. Julian's father, Jared Wood, was not in that parking lot. He received news that no parent should ever receive, that his child was gone. That his 3-year-old son, who loved dinosaurs and had a big, wild smile and was so excited about school, had been killed in a grocery store parking lot by a stranger who had no reason, no motive, no connection to his family whatsoever. A piece of their hearts, as Jared would later say in that courtroom, was gone forever.
That day, 1 week ago, she took everything from us. There's nothing that could ever replace my son or anything that my wife and I, even our other kids, are going through. It's horrendous. And I really wish no bail, period. Or extend it to the max limit possible that you can, at the very least. Just do whatever you can to keep this monster behind bars.
Police had their suspect within minutes of the attack. Bionca Ellis was arrested at the scene, knife still in her possession. There was no question about who had done this. There was surveillance footage. There were witnesses. There was a confession of sorts. Her presence at the scene, the weapon in her hand, the complete absence of any attempt to flee or deny. But law enforcement and investigators faced a question that the entire case would revolve around, and that would ultimately be left without a satisfying answer. Why? Why Margot Wood? Why Julian? Why that parking lot on that Monday afternoon? Why a 3-year-old child in a shopping cart? Investigators found no prior relationship between Ellis and the Wood family. No history, no interaction, no connection of any kind. They were strangers. Margot Wood had never met Bionca Ellis before the moment Ellis began following her through a grocery store. The prosecution built their case on the evidence of what Ellis had done. The premeditation suggested by stealing 2 knives before entering the store, the deliberate following of a mother and child from inside the store to the parking lot, the sustained nature of the attack. The facts of what happened were not in dispute. But the why, the explanation that grieving families and traumatized communities reach for in the aftermath of violence because human beings need things to make sense, never fully came. Because some things do not make sense. And the absence of sense in a case like this is its own particular cruelty. I want to ask you something right now, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When you hear a story like this, a case with no motive, no history, no reason, what do you feel? Because I think the answer to that question says something important about what we need from justice. Tell me below. Bionca Ellis went to trial in Cuyahoga County. The case against her was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, witness testimony, physical evidence, and her own presence at the scene with the weapon in her hand. The defense argued that Ellis was, in the words of her attorney, a different version of herself on the day of the attack. This argument that mental state, psychological condition, or some altered version of a person's normal self can explain or mitigate an act of violence is one that courts grapple with regularly. It is a legitimate legal framework. It is also one that the jury in this case evaluated against the totality of the evidence. On October 15, 2025, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty. Multiple counts, aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, felonious assault, child endangering, and theft. The full weight of what Bionca Ellis had done in that parking lot was reflected in the charges and confirmed in the verdict. The courtroom that day held people who had been waiting 16 months for those words. Families, friends, community members who had followed this case from the moment it broke and who had carried Julian Wood's name and face in their hearts through the entire painful process of the legal system working toward accountability. Guilty. It did not bring Julian back. Nothing ever will. But it was the acknowledgement that what happened to him was wrong, that his life had value, that the person who took it would be held responsible. The sentencing hearing for Bionca Ellis was one of the most emotionally devastating courtroom moments in recent Ohio legal history. Jared Wood, Julian's father, stood before the court and spoke about his son. He spoke about the piece of his heart that was gone forever. He spoke about what it means to lose a 3-year-old child to random, senseless violence. He asked the judge for the maximum sentence, not out of vengeance, but out of the knowledge that nothing short of that would reflect what had been taken. And then Margot Wood spoke. She said she watched her son take his first breath when he was born, and she watched him take his last breath when he died in her arms, covered in blood, in a grocery store parking lot. She said the last sound she will ever hear from her son is his scream. She said the terror in his eyes haunts her every single day. Read those words again. Let them exist in you for a moment without moving past them, because they represent something that no parent should ever have to know. No person should ever have to carry. And Margot Wood carries it every single day. Will carry it for the rest of her life because of what happened in that parking lot on June 3rd, 2024. Bionca Ellis, given the opportunity to address the court, offered a brief apology. She said she was really sorry for what happened. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She will never leave prison. She will spend the rest of her natural life behind walls and somewhere outside those walls. A family will spend every birthday, every Christmas, every dinosaur-shaped anything missing a little boy who should be there. If this story has reached you, share it right now. Send it to someone, because Julian Wood deserves to be remembered by more people than already know his name. Share this video. It is the simplest thing you can do for a 3-year-old boy who never got the chance to do anything at all. His family wants you to know who he was, not just how he died, who he was. Julian Wood had a big smile, the kind that takes over a whole face, the kind that makes everyone around it smile back without even meaning to. He had wild, playful energy, the kind that fills a house with noise and movement and laughter, the kind that exhausts parents and delights grandparents and makes every room feel more alive. He loved dinosaurs. Completely enthusiastically, with the full commitment that only a 3-year-old can bring to loving something. Dinosaurs on his clothes, dinosaur toys, dinosaur everything. He was excited about school, so excited. The way children are when the world is still entirely new and everything ahead of them feels like possibility. He was counting down. He was ready. He would have turned 5 years old the week his killer was sentenced. He would have started school. He would have made friends. He would have grown out of the dinosaur phase and into something else. Something nobody will ever know because he did not get to show us. He would have become someone. He already was someone. He was Julian Wood. 3 years old, big smile, wild energy, dinosaurs, so excited about everything. He was a child. He was loved beyond measure. He mattered with a completeness that cannot be quantified or argued or diminished by any legal proceeding or news cycle or the passage of time. He mattered. He still matters. He will always matter. Bionca Ellis is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. The legal chapter of this story is closed. The human chapter, for the Wood family, for everyone who loved Julian, for Margot Wood who carries those last moments with her every single day, will never close. There is no lesson here that feels adequate. No takeaway that makes this make sense. No framework that explains why a 3-year-old boy in a shopping cart on an ordinary Monday afternoon became the target of a stranger's violence. Some things do not have explanations. Some things just happen, sudden and terrible and completely without reason, and the only honest response is grief and anger and the determination to say the name of the person who was lost so loudly and so often that the world cannot forget them, Julian Wood. 3 years old, big smile, wild energy, dinosaurs, so excited about school, he should be here. Hug your children tonight. Tell the people you love that you love them, not because this story is a lesson, but because Julian Wood's family would give anything to have one more ordinary Monday afternoon, one more grocery run, one more moment of completely unremarkable, beautiful, ordinary life. Go be with yours. If this story moved you, like it, share it, subscribe, and leave a comment with Julian's name. Just his name. So that the comments section of this video is filled with people who know who he was and refuse to let him be forgotten. Julian Wood. For him. Always. I will see you in the next one.